Hello, I'm Danny Harrington. This is Deadair Media Football. Let's talk about the situation at Millwall with Neil Harris. Neil Harris has confirmed that he is to leave Millwall after this Saturday's game with Middlesbrough. They have Sheffield United tonight. This comes after he made some, comments, bizarre comments about, you can either take it as he was talking about a certain section of the Millwall fan base, of the supporters, or he was talking about journalists, or he was talking about smart-ass YouTubey people like me, and basically calling them thickos. The Millwall, a certain section of the Millwall supporters base believe that that comment was aimed at them. Basically, Millwall, for those of you who don't know, they've been on a lengthy undefeated run. That came to an end at home against Coventry City, who got a 1-0 win on Saturday, the 7th of December. But before that, they'd had an unbeaten run stretching back to October against Cardiff. After that, they'd drawn against West Brom, drawn against Derby. They'd beaten Plymouth. They'd beaten Swansea. They'd beaten Burnley. They'd beaten Leeds. They drew against Stoke. They drew against Sunderland. They drew away at Oxford as well. But have now lost to Coventry. And it was the post-match press bit that shocked many people, because it was Neil Harris himself after the game who talked about the players that they were missing, which any manager would do. If you've got key players missing, then you will inevitably point out, well, this player's missing and that player's missing. You know, without these players, these key components, we, lack in certain areas. So he's quite rightly pointing out the players that they're missing. You miss it. So I'm quoting him directly now. In fact, I'll go to the brilliant article. Before we go to the article, I'll just read out what he said. You miss Romain Esse. You miss Japhet Tanganga. That's what I'm going with. Don't criticize me. And you miss Jake Cooper. 3 players that would get into any championship team. And then he finishes it off in a bizarre way by saying, quote, "So just a reminder to people, the thickos, that when you take the 3 best players out of the team, that this is Millwall Football Club," end quote. So I don't know who he was intending the thickos comment for. But a lot of the Millwall fan base, some of the Millwall fan base, I say a lot of the Millwall fan base, some of the Millwall fan base have taken umbrage to it and, think it's aimed at them. It might not be. I mean, Neil Harris didn't clarify who he was aiming those comments at. But hey, we've all had enough of experts, apparently, according to one politician. So yes, Neil Harris is set to leave the club after the Middlesbrough game following those comments. And he put out a statement to the club via the club's website. Of course, he was brought in last season when the club were struggling to stay in the Championship with the sole intention of keeping them in the Championship. And he did that. He did an amazing job at that. And then this season, they started poorly. They struggled for a bit. But then they got into gear, they got into the mojo, and started to really progress. As I say, they had a length of like a month-long unbeaten run. So I say a month long, pretty much a 2-month unbeaten run. So they were doing very well at that point. So it is a bizarre decision. And what makes it even more bizarre for me is that Neil Harris, he's a Millwall legend, clearly loves the club clearly loves him. And I think as a manager, in football, there are certain managers that just work well at certain clubs. And I think Neil Harris works really well at Millwall. He just works really well for that club. That club gets him and he gets Millwall. But he hasn't been successful elsewhere. I mean, he was sacked by Cardiff, sacked by Gillingham. The only reason he didn't stay at Cambridge United is because Millwall came calling. And when Millwall appointed him, initially I thought, well, that's them gone because I did not rate Neil Harris as a manager. But he's come into Millwall again, proven me wrong, rightly so, by the way. I'm happy to be proven wrong. You learn more from being proved wrong than you will ever learn from being proved right. And he saved them last season, and this season they look like a stable mid-table team, and that's, quite frankly, if I was Millwall, I'd be delighted with that. Although I haven't checked in with my brother-in-law, who is actually a Millwall fan. I don't know if he'd be happy with that, but I think he would be, considering that I remember him watching the days of Scunthorpe United in the playoff final. Who did they beat to get promoted? Oh yeah, it was Swindon Town. So Millwall currently, Neil Harris, as I say, will manage the Sheffield United game tonight. He will manage the game against Middlesbrough at the weekend. I just want to find this statement, and this is from the BBC Sport page. And this is what he said. This is basically the statement here. Everyone knows this club is more than a job to me. It's my club and always will be. I always said when I returned that I would leave when the time was right, when the time felt right, and now is that time. It's a weird time. Weird time considering they're doing so well. Yeah, Millwall were 1 point above the relegation zone when Harris took over. Now they're, 12th in the Championship? I know it says 13th there, but they were 12th the last time I had a look. No, they're 13th. They're just behind Sheffield Wednesday, so they are 13th in the division. But, yeah, he's doing really well. And I would have said that before he returned to Millwall, Neil Harris, unfortunately, his managerial career was only heading in one direction, and that was the Vanarama National League. But he returned to Millwall. He's done really well. I don't think he'll be out of management for long, because I think there might be a vacancy at Plymouth Argyle very soon if Mr. Rooney is sacked, which I think is going to happen sooner rather than later, because I don't rate Wayne Rooney as a manager. I just, he's not very good. And I don't know why. I'm sure he's a lovely guy, just not very good as a manager. and that's that, really. Let's have a look at the odds at who might replace him. Then from the Independent, Matt Bloomfield is 2-5 with Bet Victor. Steve Cooper 6-1. Do I see Steve Cooper taking the? Gary Rowett would be interesting, considering he was Millwall manager for a brief period. Mark Robbins. I don't know if Mark Robbins is the kind of manager that Millwall need. Very good manager, but once again, suited Coventry City down to the ground. Would he be successful elsewhere? By the way, if you want to watch the rise of Coventry City under Mark Robbins, the manager that transformed Coventry City, the video will be in the eye above my head somewhere. But Matt Bloomfield, I could... none of those names really spark any confidence or excitement if I was a Millwall fan. I know where Jose Mourinho jokingly said that the next club he'd manage would be in London, and he has jokingly responded by saying, yeah, could have been, basically. Could you imagine Jose Mourinho as Millwall manager? It would have been, it would have been fun. He's looking for a return. I would love to see that. That would be an amazing appointment if he, that would be a real challenge for him as well. I think he'd do wonders there. I think they'd love him there at the Den. But the big news is that Neil Harris is out. He is left. Well, is leaving Millwall after this weekend, after calling certain sections of the supporters, according to them or the press, thickos. Like, share, subscribe, do that YouTubey nonsense. See you next time.